At my daughter's wedding, her husband had introduced me to his wealthy parents, saying, "This is the annoying beggar we have to put up with." Everyone laughed, enjoying the humiliation. But the contrast between my modest appearance and reality was exposed when his mother exclaimed, "Aren't you the mysterious billionaire who bought our company?" You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and comment below with what time it is where you are right now. The front door burst open so violently that my reading glasses nearly slipped off my nose. Emily practically flew into the living room, her teacher's cardigan askew, cheeks flushed pink from the March evening air. "Dad! I'm engaged!" Justin proposed. She thrust her left hand toward me. A modest diamond caught the warm glow of my table lamp, trembling slightly with her excitement. I set down my newspaper, the evening crossword forgotten, and rose from my worn leather chair. "Emily, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into an embrace, feeling her practically vibrate with joy. "When did this happen?" "Tonight. Right after school. He picked me up and drove to Miller Park. He got down on one knee by the old oak tree where we had our first picnic." Her words tumbled out, breathless with happiness. "Dad, I'm so happy I could burst." I held her at arm's length, studying her radiant face. 20 years old, and she still looked like the little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard. Catherine's eyes, Catherine's smile. "Show me his picture," I said, settling back into my chair as Emily fumbled for her phone. She scrolled quickly, fingers dancing across the glass. "Here, this is from his Facebook. Isn't he handsome?" I adjusted my glasses and took the phone. The young man on the screen had perfectly styled brown hair, a confident smile, and wore what looked like an expensive suit. But it wasn't his appearance that made my stomach tighten. It was the name beneath the photo, Justin Whitmore. The Whites. I knew that family name all too well from my business dealings, though Emily had no idea about my corporate empire. To her, I was just Dad, a retired man living on Social Security in a modest 2-story house. "Emily," I began carefully, my voice losing its earlier warmth. "Are you certain about your choice? This family?" Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" I stared at the screen, memories rushing back. The Whitmore corruption scandal 3 years ago. Their son's drunk driving incident that mysteriously disappeared from court records. Margaret Whitmore's affair with her business partner that destroyed 2 marriages. The Whitmores had a reputation, a history of scandal in both business and personal matters. Emily snatched the phone from my hands, her expression shifting from confusion to hurt. "How can you say that without even knowing him?" "Sweetheart, I'm just concerned." "Concerned about what?" "That someone actually wants to marry your daughter?" Her voice rose, something I'd rarely heard in our 28 years together. "Justin loves me, Dad. He chose me, a simple elementary school teacher, over all the wealthy women his mother keeps presenting to him." I stood, reaching toward her. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" She stepped back, clutching the phone to her chest like a shield. "You looked at one picture and decided he's not good enough. You don't know him at all." The hurt in her voice cut deeper than any betrayal from business rivals ever had. But the investigative reports I'd read painted a disturbing portrait: privilege without accountability, wealth without morals. "Emily, please sit down. Let's discuss this rationally." "Rationally?" She laughed bitterly. "You want to talk rationally about love? About the first man who's ever looked at me like I'm precious?" "You are precious," I said. "Not precious enough for you to be happy about my concern, apparently." Tears gathered in her eyes, shining like Catherine's used to when she was angry. "I came here thinking you'd celebrate with me. I thought my father would be thrilled I found happiness." I watched helplessly as she grabbed her purse from the coffee table, her movements sharp with wounded anger. "Emily, wait," I started. "No, Dad. I thought you'd be happy for me, but you only know how to ruin everything." Her footsteps echoed toward the front door, each one driving home the weight of our fractured relationship. I stood frozen in the living room, still holding the silence where her laughter had been only moments before. The front door slammed with a finality that seemed to reverberate through the entire house. I flinched, still frozen in the middle of my living room, listening to Emily's car roar to life in the driveway. The engine's rumble faded down Maple Street, leaving behind only the ticking of my old mantel clock and the distant hum of evening traffic. I sank into my chair, feeling all 68 years of me settle deep into my bones. The newspaper lay crumpled on the floor, the crossword puzzle staring back at me with its half-filled squares. 7 across, father's mistake. 6 letters. I thought of several possibilities, none suitable for a family-friendly publication. My eyes wandered to the mantel, where Catherine's photograph smiled down at me from our wedding day. Her white dress flowed like silk, her eyes bright with the kind of joy I'd just seen Emily experience, and then undone with my clumsy words. I rose and walked to the mantel, lifting the silver frame with careful hands. The glass was cool under my fingertips, polished each Sunday morning after I read the paper. "What would you have done, Cat?" I whispered. "Would you have stayed silent?" I already knew the answer. Catherine would have invited Justin for dinner, asked gentle questions, and observed quietly. She wouldn't have ambushed Emily with fears rooted in gossip or corporate scandals. She would have let the boy prove himself, or fail on his own. I traced the edge of the frame, hearing her voice from 1,000 parenting talks over the years. "William, you can't protect her from everything. Sometimes you have to let her make mistakes, and be there to catch her if she falls." But what if this wasn't a simple mistake? What if it was a catastrophe that could crush my daughter's trusting nature? Emily saw the good in everyone. That made her an extraordinary teacher, a loving daughter, but also dangerously vulnerable to people like the Whitmores, who treated kindness as a weakness to exploit. The house felt impossibly large around me, every shadow deeper, every creak louder. I'd lived alone here for 7 years since Catherine passed, yet tonight the silence pressed against me like a living thing. Emily usually called every other evening, her cheerful chatter filling the empty rooms. Now, because of my failure, that lifeline was severed. I returned to my chair, Catherine's photograph still in my hands. The leather cushion swallowed me, and I wondered if this was how it would be from now on, sitting alone while my daughter built a life with people who might break her. "Maybe I'm wrong," I said aloud, my voice echoing in the quiet. "Maybe Justin Whitmore is different. Maybe love can really change someone." But 30 years in business had taught me that people rarely escape their roots. The Whitmores were manipulators, takers, destroyers of whatever didn't serve them. And Emily, with her teacher's salary and generous heart, had nothing they could want, unless Justin genuinely loved her, unless he was the exception to his family's pattern. I studied Catherine's face in the photograph, searching for guidance in her familiar features. She had always been the patient one, the wise one. I was the protector, the provider, the worrier who saw dangers she never considered. I spoke from fear, didn't I? I asked her image. Not from love. The clock chimed 9 times, each note lingering in the still air. Emily was probably at Justin's apartment by now, perhaps crying on his shoulder about her terrible father. He'd comfort her, tell her he understood, maybe even suggest skipping future family dinners. Anything to drive a wedge between us, or perhaps he'd encourage her to reconcile with me, proving he was better than my suspicions. I needed to know which kind of man my daughter was marrying. I needed to see his true character, not as Emily's fiancé, but as himself when no one important was watching. My fingers drummed against the arm of the chair as a plan began to form. It was risky, maybe even foolish, but it could be the only way to protect Emily without losing her forever. I reached for the cordless phone on the side table. Emily's number was programmed into speed dial. My thumb hovered over the button. One call could start the healing process, or make everything worse. But doing nothing would certainly make everything worse. Morning sunlight poured through the checkered kitchen curtains, painting geometric patterns across the small dining table where I sat, nursing my 3rd cup of coffee. The newspaper lay folded beside my elbow, untouched. I'd been awake since 4:30, rehearsing apologies and mapping strategies until my head buzzed with exhaustion and caffeine. The cordless phone rested before me like an unarmed bomb. I had picked it up 7 times over the past hour, punched in Emily's number, then hung up before the first ring. Each time my courage faltered at the last second. I scratched my chin, a nervous habit Catherine used to tease me about, and checked the kitchen clock again. 9:15. Emily would be in her classroom by now, probably arranging art supplies or practicing story time. Would she even answer a call from me? My thumb hovered over the speed dial button, then pressed before I could lose my nerve again. 1 ring. 2. 3. Hello? Her voice was cautious, measured, and it made my chest tighten. Emily. I cleared my throat, startled by how rough I sounded. Sweetheart, I need to apologize. Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the distant murmur of children in her classroom. Dad? The weariness in her voice softened slightly. I have to start teaching in 10 minutes, but go ahead. I'll listen. I was wrong last night, I said. Not about my concerns, but about how I expressed them. You deserve celebration, not interrogation. I heard her chair squeak. She was leaning back, likely closing her eyes the way she did when she processed difficult emotions. You hurt me, Dad. Deeply. I know. And I'm sorry. I rose and began pacing the small kitchen. Emily, I want to make this right. Will you and Justin come for dinner this weekend? I'd like to get to know him properly. The silence stretched long enough that I feared the call had dropped. Really? Her voice brightened, hope threading through caution. You'll invite us? Yes. Saturday night, if that works for both of you. I'll cook pot roast. Remember how your mother used to make it? Oh, Dad. I could hear tears in her voice now, but the good kind, relief and forgiveness mingling together. I had been so afraid we'd ruined everything. Never, sweetheart. You're my daughter, my only family. I paused at the window, watching a neighbor walk his dog down the sidewalk. Just one condition for dinner. What? I chose my words carefully, knowing this was crucial. Don't tell Justin about my business affairs. Let him know me simply as your father, an ordinary man who wants to meet his daughter's fiancé. Your business affairs? Confusion crept into her tone. Dad, what business affairs? You're retired. Perfect. Emily truly had no idea about my corporate empire, my billions, my influence across 3 states. To her, I was exactly what I appeared, a modest retiree living on Social Security. I just mean I'd like to keep my financial situation private until I know someone better. Old habits, you understand? That's kind of strange, Dad, she said, but her tone softened. But if it's important to you, then it's very important. Okay. She laughed, and it sounded like sunlight breaking through clouds. I'm sure Justin will love you. He's wonderful with older people. He volunteers at the nursing home every month. My eyebrows rose. That detail hadn't appeared in any of the reports I'd read about him. Interesting. That sounds very charitable of him, I said. He is charitable, kind, funny. Dad, once you meet him, you'll see why I fell in love with him. I hope she was right, for both our sakes. Where would you like to meet? I can make reservations somewhere nice. Actually, could we eat here? At your house? Her voice warmed with memory. I'd love to see Justin in the place where I grew up. And your pot roast is so much better than any restaurant. Of course. Saturday at 6. Perfect. Oh, Dad, thank you. This means everything to me. After she hung up, I stayed in the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Phase 1 was complete. Saturday night, I would meet Justin Whitmore, not as William Stone, billionaire businessman, but as Emily's ordinary father. I went to my bedroom and opened the closet, surveying my clothes with new eyes. Most of my wardrobe was expensive suits and Italian leather shoes, the armor of a successful executive. But buried at the back were older items, faded jeans, a simple button-down shirt, a cardigan Catherine had knitted 15 years ago. For Saturday night, I needed to appear as a man living on a modest pension. A man whose approval was nice but unnecessary. A man whose daughter's happiness was his only leverage. I lifted the cardigan, inhaling its faint scent of Catherine's perfume. Even now, she would have understood my plan, testing a man's character when he believed no one important was watching. Justin Whitmore was about to meet Emily's father, but which version of me would he encounter? I folded the cardigan carefully and laid it on the bed. Two outfits lay in contrast. On the left, the charcoal wool suit, Italian shoes, and platinum Rolex, the armor of William Stone, billionaire. On the right, faded jeans with a small tear, a threadbare button-down, and scuffed boots I'd owned for 15 years. I picked up the watch, feeling its familiar weight. $20,000 of Swiss precision, gifted to myself after my first $1 million deal. Tonight, it would remain locked away. I walked to my bedroom safe, hidden behind Catherine's landscape painting, and punched in the code. The heavy safe door swung open, revealing stacks of documents, glittering jewelry, and investment portfolios worth more than most people could earn in a lifetime. I placed the Rolex inside next to Catherine's diamond necklace, letting the soft click of the closing door echo in the quiet room. "Let's see what kind of man you really are, Justin Whitmore," I murmured to my reflection. The worn clothing felt strange against my skin. The cotton shirt, softened by countless washings, hung loosely over my shoulders. These were the clothes I wore for yard work, for fixing leaky sinks, for moments when no one important was watching. Tonight they would be my disguise. I studied myself in the dresser mirror, running my fingers through gray hair to make it look less polished. The man staring back was every inch the struggling retiree. Weathered hands, tired eyes, clothes that spoke of careful budgeting and hard choices. Perfect. My reflection reminded me of my father in his later years. Proud, but worn down by financial worries. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had built an empire to avoid his fate, yet here I was deliberately imitating it. Catherine's photograph watched from the nightstand. I touched the frame gently. "You always said character reveals itself under pressure, Cat. Tonight I'll create that pressure." From my wallet, I removed all but $20 in cash, tucking the credit cards back into the safe beside my watch. A man living on Social Security wouldn't carry platinum cards or thick rolls of bills. Every detail mattered. My closet held 2 sets of car keys. The Mercedes and BMW went into the safe's drawer. I selected the keys to my 10-year-old Toyota Camry, reliable, unremarkable, invisible. The kind of car a retired man drove until it died. In the garage, I paused between vehicles. The luxury cars were hidden beneath tarps, unseen by Emily for years. She believed the Camry was my only car, that I'd sold the others after Catherine's medical bills. A carefully constructed lie to protect my secret. The Camry's interior smelled faintly of old coffee and worn vinyl. I adjusted the rearview mirror, catching another glimpse of my transformed appearance. Even I had trouble recognizing the billionaire beneath this ordinary exterior. The drive to Bella Vista took 15 minutes along Bloomington's quiet streets. I'd chosen the restaurant carefully, nice enough to make Emily happy, modest enough to fit my story. Not the type of place Justin Whitmore would normally frequent, but exactly where a teacher would take her retired father for a special dinner. I parked near the back of the lot, avoiding spaces near the entrance. Wealthy men expected convenience. Poor men took what they could get. Through the restaurant windows, I spotted Emily's bright red hair. She sat across from a young man in a suit that screamed expensive tailoring, his posture radiating confidence and privilege. Justin Whitmore, in the flesh. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was it, the moment of truth. Everything I'd learned about the Whitmores from corporate reports would either be confirmed or disproven over the next few hours. I checked my appearance one final time in the mirror, practiced a tired, ordinary smile, and stepped out of the Camry. The evening air carried the scent of approaching rain. For the next few hours, I wouldn't be William Stone, business magnate. I would be Emily's ordinary father, a man whose approval carried weight only to those who deserved it. The glass door reflected my transformed image as I reached for the handle. Inside, Emily waved excitedly from their corner table, her face glowing with anticipation. Justin looked up from his phone, his eyes taking in every detail of me in a single, measured glance. Dad! Emily bounced from her chair, her enthusiasm filling the corner of Bella Vista's dining room. She hugged me tightly, and I caught the faint scent of her lavender perfume. The same one Catherine had favored. Over her shoulder, I watched Justin rise slowly, expression carefully neutral, taking in my appearance. Emily, darling, I said, kissing her forehead, then turned to the young man who hoped to marry my daughter. You must be Justin. He extended his hand with visible reluctance, firm for exactly 2 seconds, polite, but distant. His palm was soft, manicured, the hand of a man unaccustomed to work with tools or soil. Mr. Stone, Emily's told me so much about you, he said. His tone carried that peculiar politeness wealthy people used with service workers, courteous, but dismissive. I had heard it countless times in business meetings, directed at janitors, waiters, interns. All good things, I hope. I settled into the chair across from him, noting how he positioned himself with his back to the wall, surveying the room like a young prince holding court. The restaurant buzzed quietly around us, middle-class families celebrating anniversaries, young couples on date nights, retired teachers stretching their budgets for a special evening. It was the perfect stage for the performance about to unfold. Justin looked utterly out of place among them. So, Mr. Stone, he said, glancing casually at me, Emily mentioned you're retired. He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping rhythmically against the white tablecloth. What did you do before? I asked. Various things. Maintenance work, mostly. Nothing too exciting, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. His eyebrows lifted ever so slightly, and I noticed him flicking a glance at my frayed shirt collar. Maintenance, right? He murmured under his breath. Emily jumped in quickly, sensing the tension. Dad's being modest. He worked really hard to support our family. I'm sure he did, Justin said smoothly, raising his glass slightly in acknowledgement. He picked up his menu, gold cufflinks catching the soft restaurant lighting. Have you decided what you're ordering? He asked, his tone casual but condescending. I think the seafood tower. He continued, only $85, but life's too short for cheap food, right? I'd opened my own menu and scanned the prices carefully, each number measured like a dollar accounted for. The chicken looks good. Reasonably priced, too, I said simply. Chicken's fine, I suppose, he replied with a smirk, snapping his fingers at a passing waiter. Excuse me. We're ready to order. The server, a young woman with tired eyes, approached politely. Justin rattled off his selections, appetizer, wine, the seafood tower, while I ordered the $12 chicken plate and a glass of water. Just water? Justin's voice dripped with mock concern. Come on, Mr. Stone. Let me buy you a beer. Emily's father deserves better than tap water. I smiled gently, keeping my voice calm. Water's fine, son. I don't drink much anymore. Fair enough, he said, leaning forward conspiratorially. Budget considerations, I understand. But don't worry about Emily's future. She'll never have to worry about money again once we're married. Emily's fork froze midair. Justin, what? He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. His Rolex gleamed prominently. I can give you everything your father couldn't: travel, fine clothes, a house in the right neighborhood. My weathered hand stayed steady on the table, though beneath the surface, my fists were slowly clenching. His casual cruelty, the assumption that my daughter had been deprived, the smug certainty that money solved everything, it all confirmed my deepest fears about the Whitmore family. Emily's had a good life, I said quietly. Oh, I'm sure she has. But there's good, and then there's great, he said, gesturing around the modest restaurant. Like this place? Fine for what it is, but wait until you see where I take Emily for our anniversary dinners. The server returned with Justin's wine, a $20 glass of French white he swirled pretentiously before tasting. Perfect. You can't get quality like this at home, Mr. Stone. Emily's probably never had real wine before. Actually, Emily interjected, her voice tight. Dad taught me to appreciate simple pleasures. We don't need expensive things to be happy. Justin laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. That's sweet, honey. But you say that because you've never had access to the finer things. Trust me, once you experience real luxury, you'll never want to go back to. He gestured vaguely at my clothes. This. I took a slow sip of water, using the pause to study him. Everything about him screamed entitlement, from his perfectly styled hair to his Italian leather shoes. But it wasn't his wealth that bothered me. It was the assumption that money made him superior to everyone around him. Tell me about your work, Justin, I asked evenly. Work? He laughed again. Well, I'm technically in the family business, but honestly, it runs itself. My real passion is travel. Just got back from Monaco last month. Amazing place, though I doubt you've been. Emily shifted uncomfortably. Justin enjoys exploring different cultures, she offered weakly. Cultures, casinos, yacht clubs, they're all the same thing, really. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. Look at this view from my hotel balcony. $2,000 a night, but worth every penny. I watched Emily's expression tighten with each boast. This wasn't the humble, loving man she described. This was exactly what I had feared, a spoiled child treating my daughter like another acquisition. The food arrived. Justin's seafood tower dominated the table, a monument to excess, while my simple chicken plate waited silently before me. He attacked his seafood with unabashed enthusiasm, lobster juice dripping down his chin as he catalogued his latest indulgences. My chicken sat before me, modest but sufficient, though my appetite waned with every boastful word. Each phrase from Justin confirmed everything I'd feared about his character, but seeing Emily's growing discomfort made the victory taste hollow. You know what, Mr. Stone? Justin jabbed a lobster fork toward me between bites. I respect what you've done, raising Emily on limited means. Must have been tough. I nodded slightly, careful to hide my irritation. But that's all behind us now, he continued, oblivious to the storm brewing in Emily's eyes. I'm going to give her a life she never even imagined. Vacations in Europe, designer wardrobes, maybe a nice house in the suburbs where she won't have to worry about property taxes. He reached into his jacket and laid a set of keys on the table with deliberate care. The BMW emblem caught the overhead lights, gleaming like a trophy. See this, Meef? Costs more than most people earn in a year. But Emily deserves to ride in style. He grinned at me with the certainty of someone who had never been questioned. I know you want the best for your daughter, Mr. Stone. Well, I am the best. My hand trembled slightly around my water glass. Across the table, Emily had gone pale, her discomfort radiating like heat. Justin, please, she whispered, glancing nervously at nearby diners who were beginning to stare. What? I'm being honest, he replied, draping an arm possessively across her shoulders. Your father understands that a man provides for his family. He he wasn't in a position to provide much, was he, Mr. Stone? The question hung in the air like a gauntlet. I set down my glass with measured care, watching the condensation bead around its base. I provided what I could, I said quietly. Of course you did. And now it's my turn, he said, leaning back with the satisfaction of someone who truly believed he was generous. Emily won't have to clip coupons or shop at discount stores anymore. She can finally live the way she was meant to. Emily pulled back sharply, her voice trembling with controlled anger. I never complained about how we lived, Dad, because you did your best. But trust me. Once you experience real comfort. He gestured toward his wrist, the Rolex sparkling under the restaurant lights. 25 grand. A man has to reward success. $25,000. I'd paid less for my own Rolex, the one safely locked away in my bedroom safe. The irony would have been laughable if his arrogance weren't so suffocating. You know what I think, Mr. Stone? Justin leaned forward, lowering his voice as if confiding a secret. I think you should be grateful. Your daughter could have ended up with some nobody, some teacher or office worker scraping by. Instead, she's marrying into the Whitmore family. The name dropped like a benediction, as if I should bow in recognition. The Whitmores own half the commercial real estate downtown. My mother just closed a deal worth $12 million. He pulled a platinum credit card from his wallet and placed it beside the car keys like a weapon in a display of power. Once we're married, Emily will never want for anything. Emily's hands clenched in her lap, knuckles white. Money isn't everything, Justin, she said quietly. He laughed, dismissive and sharp. Look, honey, I love your idealism. But let's be realistic. Your father did his best with what he had, he said, nodding toward my worn clothes. But now you can have everything you deserve. Under the table, my hands formed tight fists. Every word from this spoiled man confirmed my fears. He didn't love Emily, he collected her. She was another trophy, proof of his benevolence in rescuing a poor teacher from her modest life. The other diners were openly watching now, drawn by his increasingly loud proclamations. An elderly couple shook their heads in disapproval. A young family huddled their children closer, discomfort plain on their faces. You understand, don't you, Mr. Stone? Justin's voice carried like a sermon. Emily's beauty, her kindness, she deserves better than struggling to make ends meet. I can give her the world. I studied his face, seeing only entitled smugness where there should have been love, respect, or even decency. This wasn't the man speaking of his future wife, it was a collector displaying his latest acquisition. I need to leave now, I said quietly, pushing back from the table. Justin's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Confusion flickered across his features. Leave? But we haven't finished dinner. I have. I stood deliberately, every movement measured, the careful dignity of a man with little left but his pride. Thank you for the meal. But he waved toward his seafood tower, toward the wine, toward the platinum cards still gleaming on the white tablecloth. I'm buying dinner. The least you could do is stay and appreciate the gesture. Emily rose, her face flushed with mortification. Dad, wait. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for me, Emily. I looked directly at Justin, whose bewildered expression spoke of someone unaccustomed to being dismissed by anyone of lesser status. I've learned everything I need to know tonight. Everything about what? Justin's voice carried indignation. I've been nothing but generous, nothing but honest about what I can offer Emily. I lifted my jacket from the chair back, feeling the weight of every patron's gaze. The restaurant had fallen into a tentative hush, broken only by the soft jazz overhead and the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Good night, Emily. Good night, Justin. I walked toward the exit with deliberate steps, neither rushing nor glancing back. Behind me, Emily's voice cracked with embarrassment and confusion. Dad, please. But I was already through the glass doors, stepping into the cool evening rain. The parking lot stretched ahead, my modest Camry waiting in shadow while luxury cars gleamed under the restaurant lights. I'd gotten precisely what I came for, confirmation that Justin Whitmore was everything I feared, and more. The key turned in my front door with a familiar click, and I entered the quiet of my home. The sudden silence struck like a physical force after the clatter of the restaurant and Justin's booming voice. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of Catherine's old mantel clock filled the space. I hung my coat on the wooden peg by the door, the same peg I'd used for 15 years, and fumbled for the light switch. Warm yellow light flooded the living room. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it hours ago, yet the room felt smaller, more honest than the performance I'd just endured. The threadbare shirt clung uncomfortably to my shoulders, damp with evening air. I needed to shed this costume of poverty I'd worn like armor. Climbing the stairs, each step creaked under the weight of what I had learned about my daughter's future husband. In my bedroom, I peeled off the worn clothes and folded them carefully. They'd served their purpose. Revealed Justin's true nature with surgical precision. I pulled on comfortable pajamas and my old robe, the one Catherine had given me for our 20th anniversary. the kitchen called. I filled the electric kettle, letting the familiar ritual of making tea calm my churning thoughts. Steam rose as I carried the cup to my reading chair. The leather cushions had molded to me over the years, supporting countless evenings of solitude. Tonight, they felt like a confessional booth. Emily is an adult, I whispered to the empty room. Maybe she sees something in him that I missed. Even as I said it, I knew it was false comfort. Justin Whitmore had shown himself completely tonight, his arrogance, his casual cruelty, his perception of my daughter as a trophy rather than a partner. Catherine's photograph watched from the mantel, her wedding day smile frozen in silver-framed eternity. I rose and carried it to my chair, holding her image in my weathered hands. What would you do, Kat? How do you protect someone who doesn't want protecting? Her silence weighed heavier than usual. In life, she would have guided Emily gently toward the truth, asking the right questions to lead her to her own revelations. I had always been the blunt instrument, she was the surgeon's scalpel. Outside, a car door slammed. Through the window, I watched the Hendersons return from their evening out, laughing together as they walked to their front door. 43 years of marriage, and they still held hands on their driveway. That was what Emily deserved. Partnership, respect, genuine affection. My tea sat forgotten, cooling beside me as I wrestled with impossible choices. I could confront Emily directly, tell her everything I'd seen tonight, but she had already defended Justin once, chosen him over her father's concerns. Would she listen now, or would my interference push her deeper into his arms? I could confront Justin himself, drop the disguise, reveal the billionaire behind the weathered retiree. The shock might humble him temporarily, but men like Justin didn't change. They only learned to hide their true selves more carefully. Or I could stay silent, watch my beloved daughter marry a man who would slowly chip away at her confidence, her joy, her generous, trusting spirit. Stand by while Justin Whitmore transformed my bright, compassionate Emily into another trophy wife, isolated from her modest roots and dependent on his wealth. The clock chimed 11 times. Hours had passed since I'd left the restaurant, and I was no closer to a solution. Catherine's face smiled up at me from her photograph, eternally young and wise. She has to learn for herself, doesn't she? I whispered to her image. If I interfere, she'll never forgive me. If I don't. The thought hung unfinished in the quiet room. Through the window, the Henderson house had gone dark, save for a single upstairs light. They were probably reading together in bed, sharing the quiet intimacy of a lifetime partnership. I pressed my lips to Catherine's photograph, tasting glass and longing. Help her find her way, love. Help her see what I cannot show her. Rising from my chair, I carried the frame back to its place on the mantel. The decision crystallized as I set it down. I would not interfere. Emily had chosen her path, and I would trust in her intelligence and strength to recognize the truth when it became unavoidable. But watching from the sidelines while my daughter walked into what I feared would be years of subtle emotional strain, years of slowly eroding confidence, would be the hardest thing I had ever done. 5 months passed like a slow-moving storm. Spring melted into summer, summer faded into early autumn. Wedding preparations consumed Emily's life. I kept my promise to myself, no interference, no warnings, no attempts to sway her. Yet every plan she made with Justin Whitmore felt like watching someone unknowingly step into quicksand. The wedding invitation arrived in August, elaborate, gold-embossed, thick cardstock that surely cost more than some families' monthly groceries. It now sat on my dresser like a grim talisman, catching the early September light. Dawn had broken over Bloomington hours ago, but I had been awake since 4, staring at the ceiling, dreading this day, Emily's wedding day. What should have been joy instead felt like watching a beloved ship sail toward hidden rocks. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and shuffled to the bathroom. My reflection stared back at me, gray stubble, tired eyes, the weight of secrets carved into every line around my mouth. Today I would smile, celebrate, while my heart ached for the future I feared awaited my daughter. The hot shower could not wash away the dread lodged in my bones. I shaved with care, hands steady despite the tremor of anxiety that had haunted me for weeks. In a few hours, I would walk Emily down the aisle to marry a man I believed would make her miserable. My modest suit hung pressed on the bedroom door, the same threadbare outfit I had worn to the restaurant dinner 5 months ago. The symbolism was not lost on me. Today, as then, I would play the role of Emily's humble, devoted father, watching from the margins while the Whitmore family's wealth dominated every detail. Catherine's wedding photograph sat beside the invitation. She glowed with happiness, hand resting lightly on my young arm as we posed outside the church where Emily would wed today. We were so hopeful then, so certain that love conquered all obstacles. "I wish you were here, Kat," I whispered to her image. "Emily needs her mother today. Someone who can see past all the expensive flowers and the lavish dresses to what truly matters." I picked up the simple wedding gift I'd wrapped, a modest jewelry box holding her grandmother's pearl necklace. Nothing extravagant, nothing to flaunt the fortune I could have spent, just a meaningful token from a father who appeared to have little but love to offer. The irony cut deep. I could have bought Emily the most magnificent wedding in Illinois, matched the Whitmores dollar for dollar in displaying affection through luxury. Instead, I was cast in the role of grateful, poor relation, thankful for their son's generosity toward my unworthy daughter. My coffee tasted bitter as I sat at the kitchen table, watching neighbors begin their Saturday routines. The Hendersons worked silently in their garden, the quiet intimacy of decades together speaking volumes. That was what marriage should look like, not the performative spectacle of wealth that awaited me at the church. At 10 o'clock, I finally dressed. The suit felt like a costume now, stiff and awkward after months of private comfort, but it served its purpose, maintaining the fiction that had become my prison. Keys to my modest Camry sat on the counter next to those for the Mercedes and BMW. Even on his daughter's wedding day, William Stone, billionaire, would remain hidden while William Stone, retiree, played his assigned role. The drive to St. Mark's Episcopal Church took 12 minutes through Bloomington's familiar streets, every turn steeped in memory, every stoplight a moment to steady my churning heart. I had driven this route countless times, Christmas services with Catherine, Emily's school plays, community events marking the rhythm of ordinary life. Today felt different. Today felt like the end of something precious and the beginning of something I could not control. Emily had chosen this church for its beauty and simplicity, sacred yet unpretentious. She wanted her wedding to reflect her values. Love as the centerpiece, meaning over display, sincerity over extravagance. How ironic, then, that Justin's family had turned even this modest sanctuary into a showcase of their wealth. I parked between a Mercedes and a BMW, my Camry modest and unassuming among the luxury vehicles. Through the stained glass windows, I glimpsed elaborate floral arrangements that likely cost more than most people earned in a year. Taking a deep breath, I checked my reflection one last time in the rearview mirror. The man looking back seemed exactly as he should, proud, yet humbled by circumstances beyond his control, grateful for his daughter's happiness even if I could not enhance it with grandeur. Emily needed me strong today. I would smile, celebrate, and play the part she expected, even as my heart ached for the future I feared awaited her. The church bells began to toll, calling the faithful to witness. I squared my shoulders and walked toward the building that would host what I prayed was not the gravest mistake of my daughter's life. St. Mark's Episcopal Church had been transformed into something out of a luxury magazine. White roses and lilies cascaded from every pew end, their fragrance almost overwhelming in the afternoon warmth. Crystal chandeliers caught the sunlight streaming through the stained glass, scattering rainbow patterns across marble floors that likely cost more to decorate than I supposedly earned in a year. My Camry looked painfully out of place amid the sea of Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas. I stepped through the ornate entrance, conscious of every squeak from my worn dress shoes, every loose thread in my threadbare suit jacket. "Mr. Stone!" Emily's voice rang across the vestibule, bright with nervous excitement. She practically floated toward me in her wedding dress, ivory silk and Belgian lace flowing around her like liquid moonlight. "Sweetheart, you look radiant," I said, embracing her carefully, mindful of the elaborate hairstyle and the photographer hovering nearby. "I'm so nervous, Dad. My hands won't stop shaking." She held up trembling fingers, manicured and adorned with temporary jewelry. "Perfectly normal," I reassured her, taking her hands in my weathered ones. I felt the familiar weight of responsibility and love. "Your mother was the same way on our wedding day. Couldn't hold her bouquet steady during the ceremony." Around us, the Whitmore family's guests filled the church with subtle displays of wealth, women in designer dresses exchanging whispered pleasantries, men in bespoke suits discussing business and golf handicaps. I recognized several faces from society pages, people moving in circles far above my supposed station, passing through me as if I were invisible. "There's my beautiful bride." Justin's voice boomed across the vestibule as he approached, resplendent in what I estimated was a $5,000 tuxedo. His smile faltered slightly when he noticed me standing beside Emily. "Hello, Mr. Stone. I see you found something appropriate to wear." The insult, delivered with his trademark smirk, was designed to sound complimentary to anyone not listening closely. Emily's cheeks flushed pink. Embarrassment or anger? I could not tell. "He looks handsome," she said quietly, smoothing over tension with her teacher's diplomacy. "Of course he does. Nothing wrong with vintage fashion," I replied softly. Justin's laugh carried no warmth as he adjusted his platinum cufflinks. "The photographer wants some family photos before the ceremony. Emily, your side first, then mine when my parents arrive." I stood patiently as the photographer arranged us, conscious of how my modest appearance contrasted with the ornate surroundings in every shot. Emily glowed beside me, seemingly unaware of her groom's continuing subtle jabs. "Could you step back just a bit, Mr. Stone?" the photographer asked politely. "The lighting works better if you're slightly behind the bride." Even the professional understood the visual hierarchy being established. I was a supporting player in this expensive production, grateful to be included but careful not to upstage the stars. The church gradually filled with guests, a clear division between Emily's modest friends and family on the left, and Justin's wealthy social circle on the right. The contrast was stark: affordable dresses versus designer gowns, rented tuxedos versus custom tailoring, public school teachers versus investment bankers and real estate moguls. "Dad, it's time." Emily squeezed my arm as the wedding march began, streaming through what sounded like an incredibly high-end sound system. We walked slowly down the aisle together, Emily's train whispering against the marble floors, while guests rose in respectful silence. Every gaze felt heavy on me, curious and speculative about the ordinary man who had somehow raised such a remarkable daughter. At the altar, Justin waited with his groomsmen, young men who looked like they'd been plucked straight from a country club brochure. His smile was confident, almost possessive, the expression of someone claiming a prize won through privilege, breeding, and wealth. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" the minister intoned in the ceremonial tradition. "I do," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside my chest. I kissed Emily's forehead gently and placed her hand in Justin's, formally transferring her care from one man to another. Taking my seat in the front pew, I watched as my daughter promised to love, honor, and cherish a man I feared would gradually erode her spirit through countless subtle cruelties disguised as concern. The ceremony unfolded with lavish precision. Musicians played professionally trained pieces, imported flowers lined the aisle, and the minister performed with the ease of someone who had presided over countless society weddings. Every detail screamed wealth, threatening to overshadow Emily's simple, heartfelt vision for her day. "You may kiss the bride," the minister announced. Justin swooped in with theatrical flair, dipping her backward while the photographer captured the moment in glossy perfection. The recessional music swelled as the new Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore strode down the aisle. Emily shone with radiant joy. Justin beamed with the triumph of someone who believed he had claimed a prize. Guests erupted in applause, showering rose petals that surely cost more than most people's monthly car payment. At the reception entrance, Justin leaned toward me as we waited for the photographer to arrange family portraits. "Hope you brought your appetite, Mr. Stone," he whispered. This dinner costs more per plate than you probably spend on groceries in a month. His words carried a polite smile for the cameras, but the underlying message was unmistakable. Remember your place in this hierarchy. A familiar voice interrupted from across the room. We're still waiting for my parents' flight. They should be here within the hour. Margaret and Robert Whitmore, the power couple behind the family fortune, were en route. I had read about them in business journals for years, yet they believed their new son-in-law's father-in-law was nothing more than Emily's devoted but modest parent. Soon, they would learn differently. Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding coordinator's voice rang across the banquet hall like a bell. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Whitmore have finally arrived from their European flight. Conversations froze mid-sentence as heads turned toward the grand entrance. I felt the magnetic shift in the room, the way the wealthy gravitate toward those wealthier than themselves. From my modest seat at table 12, I had a perfect view. They entered like royalty on a state visit. Margaret Whitmore, resplendent in what I estimated was a $10,000 designer gown, moved with the confidence of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Diamonds sparkled at her throat and wrists, real, unmistakably valuable. Beside her, Robert Whitmore commanded attention in a flawless tuxedo, his platinum cufflinks catching the chandelier light as he scanned the room with a practiced, calculating gaze. From across the hall, the expensive Swiss watch on his wrist gleamed like a statement of authority. Mom! Dad! Justin practically bounced across the polished floor, his earlier smugness replaced by excitement at finally showing off for his parents. You made it! I was starting to worry the flight got delayed again. Margaret embraced him with the meticulous care of someone protecting delicate makeup and an elaborate hairstyle. Darling, we wouldn't miss your special day. The flight from Monaco was dreadful, but we're here now. How's married life treating you? Robert clapped Justin on the shoulder, his businessman's smile automatic and well-rehearsed. Incredible, Dad. Emily is perfect. Everything I could have hoped for in a wife. Justin's grin stretched wide as he gestured toward the bridal table, where Emily shone like a vision in her gown. Come on, let me introduce you to everyone. I observed the family reunion with the detached curiosity of a man watching actors on a stage. Soon enough, the performance would take an unexpected turn, but first, Justin's voice rang out with that familiar note of self-satisfaction. Let me introduce you to the annoying beggar we're all forced to tolerate. Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. Even by Justin's standards, the remark was startlingly crude. A woman at the table beside us actually dropped her fork, the silver clattering against the fine china. Margaret's eyebrows arched in surprise, but she followed Justin's gesture toward me with polite curiosity. Robert glanced around, mildly embarrassed by his son's public insolence, noticing the now staring guests. Justin, Margaret said, her tone sharp and precise, forged from decades of boardroom authority. That is hardly appropriate. Oh, it's fine, Mom. He's used to it by now, aren't you, Mr. Stone? Justin's smug grin stretched as he stepped ahead, leading the way. All three Whitmores approached our table. Justin moved confidently, his parents following with the deliberate composure of people accustomed to commanding attention. I remained seated, hands folded on the white tablecloth, watching Margaret's expression as she closed the distance. Her keen, business-trained eyes scanned me with the automatic assessment of someone weighing net worth, social position, and potential usefulness. Yet as she came within speaking distance, something shifted. A subtle frown formed on her perfectly made-up forehead, her head tilting slightly, like a bird hearing an unfamiliar note. The sharpness in her gaze, eyes that had negotiated million-dollar deals and spotted opportunities others overlooked, narrowed with sudden focus. Excuse me, she said, her polished social tone giving way to the intensity she likely used in boardrooms. Haven't we met before? The question hovered electric across the table. Guests quieted, sensing the gravity of the moment. Justin's confident smile wavered, though he had no idea why. I met Margaret's eyes steadily, keeping my expression neutral. I doubt it, ma'am. If we had met, I'm certain I would remember someone as distinguished as yourself. Margaret Whitmore had not built her empire on surface answers. Her frown deepened as she studied me with the precision of someone solving a complex problem. I could almost see her mind turning, sifting through countless meetings, social events, and encounters, discarding the irrelevant and holding on to the significant. "No," she said slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "No. I'm sure we've met recently. Your face is very familiar." Justin laughed nervously, uneasy under his mother's unyielding scrutiny. "Mom, trust me. You haven't met him. He's nobody, just Emily's father." Margaret barely heard him. Her trained memory was at work, scanning, analyzing, connecting threads. Her fingers moved unconsciously to her throat, brushing her diamond necklace as she concentrated. Then her eyes widened. Her hand shot to her mouth, the diamond ring catching the chandelier light as recognition broke across her face like the first rays of dawn. Her perfectly made-up cheeks paled. "Oh my goodness," she breathed, voice trembling, barely audible over the soft clink of crystal and silver. Aren't you that mysterious billionaire who bought our entire company last year?" The question landed like a thunderclap. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Forks hovered above plates. The string quartet continued its delicate melody, absurdly unaware of the storm unfolding around them. I met Margaret's astonished gaze directly, my voice calm and measured. "Yes, Margaret, that was me." Justin's crystal wine glass slipped from his fingers, clattering to the marble floor and shattering into 1,000 sparkling fragments. The sound echoed through the suddenly hushed hall, the shards scattering like fallen stars across polished stone. "What?" Justin's voice cracked, high and incredulous. No, that's impossible. You're nobody. You live in that tiny house. You drive that junk car. You wear clothes from thrift stores." "Yes," I said quietly, rising from my chair with deliberate composure. "I've heard all your observations about my appearance many times over the past few months." Justin Robert Whitmore froze beside his bride, his sharp, analytical mind struggling to process the implications. For months, he had mocked and belittled the mysterious buyer who now controlled the Whitmore family's financial destiny. Color drained from his face as the full weight of the revelation settled over him. Guests around us were pulling out phones, scrolling frantically for information. The fortunate ones with business contacts quickly unearthed articles about William Stone, the reclusive billionaire whose anonymous corporate acquisitions had made headlines. Others found social media posts documenting his purchase of 3 major Illinois companies over the past 18 months. But you can't be," Justin stammered, his $5,000 tuxedo suddenly feeling like a borrowed costume. "You're poor. You eat at modest restaurants. You ask for water instead of wine." "I asked for water because I don't drink at family dinners," I said evenly. "And I chose modest restaurants so I could observe your character when you thought no one important was watching." Margaret Whitmore had regained her composure with the practiced poise of a seasoned negotiator, though her hands still trembled slightly. "Mr. Stone, we had no idea. If we had known, if you had told us, you would have treated me differently?" "I didn't know," I replied, my voice heavy with the weight of months of accumulated insults. "So I learned exactly who you all are when you think there are no consequences." Emily sat at the bridal table, her face a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Beside her, her new husband seemed to be unraveling entirely, gasping like a fish dragged from water. "Dad?" Emily's voice pierced the murmurs of astonished guests. I don't understand." I turned to my daughter, my chest aching at the hurt in her eyes. "Emily, sweetheart, I should have told you years ago. I hid my business success because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I own." "Business success?" she repeated slowly, the rustle of her wedding gown like autumn leaves. "Dad, what business success?" "I own Stone Industries, darling," I said. "And as of last year, I also own the company that employs your husband's family." Whispers erupted across the banquet hall as guests exchanged phones, showing articles and search results about the mysterious William Stone. The society photographer moved closer, clicking rapidly, capturing what would soon be remembered as the most talked about wedding reception in Illinois. Justin dropped to his knees, the pristine tuxedo rumpled, his hair disheveled from frantic hands running through it. "Mr. Stone, sir, please. I didn't know. I never would have. Please forgive me." His desperation was pathetic, a pitiful contrast to the confident young man who had spent months mocking my modest appearance. "Stand up, Justin," I said quietly. "Begging doesn't suit you." He scrambled to his feet, his face red with humiliation. Around us, the Whitmore's wealthy friends watched with the fascination of spectators witnessing a social execution. "I can explain everything," Justin stammered, tripping over his words. I was testing you." "Yes, that's it," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "I wanted to make sure you'd love Emily for herself, not her family's money. I was protecting her." The lie was so transparent that several guests laughed outright. Even his mother looked momentarily embarrassed by the failed deception. Robert Whitmore stepped forward, his business instincts kicking in over his shock. "Mr. Stone, perhaps we could discuss this privately. There may have been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstandings, Robert," I said evenly, every word deliberate. "Your son revealed exactly who he is when he believed I was powerless to respond. Character cannot be faked when no one important is watching." Margaret nodded slowly, her sharp, calculating mind already assessing the potential damage to their family's reputation and business empire. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Stone," she said. "Justin's behavior has been utterly inexcusable." The truth spread through the banquet hall like wildfire. Guests exchanged frantic whispers, shared texts, and scrolled social media posts, all confirming what had just been revealed. The wedding photographer's camera clicked relentlessly, capturing every moment of this unprecedented social reversal. I took a slow, deliberate glance around the lavish hall one last time. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, elaborate floral arrangements filled every corner, and all of it had been purchased with money from the company I now controlled. Justice had finally arrived. Justin raised a crystal champagne flute with shaking hands, the designer tuxedo rumpled and soaked in panic from his earlier desperation. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice cracked, quivering like a child's. Let's toast to the most wonderful father-in-law a man could ask for." The attempt was pitiful. Even his own family friends winced. Several guests turned away, unwilling to witness the public humiliation of someone they had once admired. "Please, Mr. Stone," Justin stammered, champagne sloshing over the rim as his hands trembled. "I was just joking all those times." "You knew I was joking, right?" "Just good-natured teasing." I remained standing beside my modest chair unchanged. My worn suit, weathered hands, and humble appearance were exactly as they had been when Justin thought I was powerless. "No, Justin," I said quietly, my voice carrying across the silent room. "You showed me who you really are. When you believed there were no consequences, you revealed your true character." "But I didn't mean it. You called me an annoying beggar, not 10 minutes ago," he protested. I interrupted, calm but firm. "In front of your parents. In front of Emily. In front of 200 guests. That wasn't a joke. That was your honest opinion of someone you considered beneath you." Emily stood frozen at the bridal table, her gown heavy as though it had turned to armor she could no longer wear. Tears filled her eyes as she looked between her father and her new husband. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Because, sweetheart, I wanted you to choose love over money," I said gently. "I wanted you to marry someone who treasures your kindness, your intelligence, your beautiful heart, not someone who sees you as a prize to be won." Margaret Whitmore regained her composure, her sharp businesswoman's mask slipping back into place. "Mr. Stone, on behalf of our family, I sincerely apologize for Justin's behavior. It's been inexcusable." "Apologize to yourselves," I replied. "You raised him to believe that wealth makes him superior to others. Tonight he learned that assumption can be dangerous." Justin dropped to his knees again, clutching my worn pant leg like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll change. I swear I'll be different. You're 30 years old, Justin, I said gently but firmly. If you haven't learned respect and humility by now, you never will. I pried his grasping hands from my pants. Character isn't something you put on like a suit. It's who you are when you think no one is watching. The banquet hall had become a theater. 200 people witnessed the most dramatic reversal of fortune they had ever seen. Justin Whitmore, heir to a vast real estate empire, groveling before the modest man he had spent months insulting. Phone cameras captured every moment, preserving the spectacle for eternity. I turned to Emily across the polished marble floor. You're an adult, Emily. You've made your choice, and I respect that, but I will not tolerate disrespect, no matter the family ties. Dad, please don't leave, she said, stepping forward, her train rustling. We can work this out. Justin will apologize properly, won't you, Justin? Justin nodded frantically from the floor. Yes. Yes. I'll do whatever you want. Just give me another chance. I looked down at his desperate, fearful face. There was no genuine remorse. He wasn't sorry for his cruelty, only that he had been caught. Some mistakes, I said quietly, cannot be undone with apologies. You spent months revealing your true self, Justin. Money doesn't change character, it exposes it. I walked slowly toward the banquet hall's exit, acutely aware of the weight of 200 eyes following my every step. The string quartet had fallen silent, their instruments resting as the audience absorbed the unprecedented spectacle. Mr. Stone, wait! Robert Whitmore's voice cut through the quiet, his business instincts overriding his embarrassment. Surely we can discuss this like reasonable men. There are contracts to consider. Business relationships. The contracts will be honored, I replied without turning. I've never broken an agreement, and I won't start now. But I will not feign respect for those who've revealed their true nature. Behind me, Justin's voice escalated to a desperate wail. You can't do this! Emily, tell him he can't do this! We're family now! I paused at the threshold of the ballroom, my hand resting lightly on the ornate doorframe. The cool evening air drifted in, carrying the liberating scent of truth and freedom from pretense. Emily, I called to my daughter, my voice calm but firm. You know where I live. You know I love you. But I will not stand by and watch my child marry someone who thinks cruelty is acceptable entertainment. The grand doors closed behind me with a soft sigh, shutting out Justin's frantic pleas and the murmurs of wedding guests who had just witnessed one of the most dramatic reversals of fortune they would ever see. Outside, the September sky was crisp and clear. Stars glittered like scattered diamonds, indifferent to the human drama unfolding below. My modest Camry waited among the luxury vehicles, perfectly humble and unassuming, exactly as it had been when I arrived. I sank into the worn driver's seat, allowing myself a moment of quiet reflection, feeling the weight of decades of secrecy lift from my shoulders. No more pretending to be poor. No more tolerating the arrogance of spoiled children who equate wealth with worth. The engine hummed to life, familiar and dependable. As I pulled away from the reception, I caught a glimpse of the glowing banquet hall in my rearview mirror. Inside, my daughter was learning that her father had been far more than she realized, and her new husband was discovering that actions carry consequences. Justice, I thought, sometimes arrives fashionably late, but it always arrives. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.